In this episode, we're talking about the sit cue. In recent years, it's become something of a hot topic in training as many trainers and dog parents just don't feel the need to train it anymore. So why all the controversy over this cue that was once the very first thing that we taught as dog parents? Hi, I'm Freya Locke, dog parent of Twyla the Springador, owner of my on-the-ground business Locke's Dogs, behaviourist and trainer, and the creator of the online Fun Not Fear school, club and podcast. We know there's nothing in life that can be taught with fear that can't be taught with fun apart from fear itself, and so it's our mission to teach you how to have a great life with your dog with none of the aversive equipment and icky methods of the past. Why listen to me? Well, when it comes to dogs who have behaviour struggles, I've been there and got the t-shirt. Guiding my own dog through his many struggles, I realised behaviour is my passion in life. I got qualified and have now helped hundreds of dogs with anxiety-based struggles, both in person and over the internet. I also know that dog parents want clear, easy and jargon-free advice they can follow that actually works. We'll make it easy for you and your dog to have the fun, not fear life you need together and overcome any anxiety your dog might struggle with, without doing anything complicated or difficult, without doing anything scary, and by simply having fun with your dog, playing games and doing the things you both enjoy. Every once in a while, a topic comes up in training that changes how we think about things or how we do things. Over recent years, one of those topics is the sit cue. So one of the first things that people taught their brand new puppy most of the time is the sit cue, and that was thought to be the cure for many problems, but often it's no longer taught at all. So why do we train it? What purpose does it have? Who does it suit to teach it? Should we teach it at all? So in this episode, we're digging into the sit cue and exploring further what this seemingly innocent cue might actually be doing to our dogs. So, why all the controversy? Well, for one thing, there's health. In recent years, it's shown more and more that lots of dogs are struggling, often silently, with things like arthritis, and then having them sit repeatedly at curbs when people come to the house, or when you're in your pub or the cafe or anywhere else. It might not only be causing pain as they perform the sit, but it could also be exacerbating the problem by causing unnecessary wear and tear on the joints. I mean, if you imagine being asked to sit 30 or 40 times a day, and some dogs are, that's not going to do you an awful lot of good, is it? So a lot of us have uncomfortable or slippery floors in our houses, as laminate and stone tiles, etc., etc. These can also cause joint or muscle problems as the dog's trying to remain sitting in the correct position, and they're often sliding about in the process. I mean, have you ever seen the dogs sitting on the kitchen floor and their legs and bum just sort of slide out from underneath them? It can't be really very comfortable, and for some dogs that might actually even be a factor in hip dysplasia, which is so very painful. So the sit gives an illusion of control. In the past, a dog who didn't like people or other dogs on walks might be asked to sit as the trigger went past. If the dog performs, the trigger would go past and the dog was deemed to have been cured of all their struggles. But nowadays we know different. I mean, in my experience, teaching a dog to sit as a potential trigger goes past could be, it could have quite the opposite effect if the dog being asked to sit is already feeling the pressure from having the trigger nearby. So, I mean, imagine us being asked to sit while something you're scared of, maybe a giant spider or, in my case, a clown walked past. How would that make you feel? I guarantee you wouldn't feel any less afraid. Imagine how helpless you're going to feel as you're forced to allow this thing closer and closer and closer, and you've got to sit there. You can't run away from it. You can't tell it to go away. You just have to sit. And if you add to that possible discomfort and pain, you might have bad hips or your legs might be sore from all the walking, and then that trigger then becomes even more of a trigger, because not only are you then being forced into a sit position while it's coming closer and closer and closer, but it hurts to do so. So you're associating pain with that trigger as well as the fear. So that's definitely not the cure-all thing for reactive dogs out and about on walks. Or imagine, dogs that are asked to sit instead of chasing the sheep, for example. Do you think the action of sitting will make them want to chase that sheep less? Or will it feel more like you're dangling little sheep in front of them, like little woolly nuggets of joy that they just can't get to, and it will just make them want to chase even more? Try telling a toddler no, sit there nicely and behave in the sweeties aisle at Tesco and see the response that you get from them. Dogs crossing the road are often asked for a sit, but again, this is an illusion of control. A dog can jump out into the traffic just as easily from a sit as they can from a stand position or from any other position. And also, they might just have really worn out and achy legs and hips, and it's not very kind to them to then just keep asking them to sit. And then this is going to add to problems like anxiety that they might have around going on walks already if they're possibly feeling uncomfortable. Dogs that pull on walks, dogs that are highly anxious, dogs that are highly over-aroused and overexcited, often there's a reason behind that, and we need to examine all of those reasons, including possible pain, which might be being caused from being asked to sit at the side of the road. So those are just many reasons why sit's fallen out of favour. However, I do teach a sit. However, common it is to teach a sit these days. It's just something that I think is important to do, because I think as long as it's taught right, it's not necessarily a bad thing. You see, I make sure I teach it in very short increments each day, using rewards and no force whatsoever, either physical or otherwise. The dog or the puppy, they get to choose if they want to participate, and we only ever train for 2 or 3 minutes at a time, and all the while we allow the dog chances to move away if they want to. In fact, I actually throw pieces of treat away from myself so the dog can actually go after the piece of treat and then choose whether or not they want to come back. So I actually make it really obvious that the dog doesn't have to stay if they don't want to. They can move on to other things. There's other toys in the environment. There's probably chews and things laying around. They don't have to spend the time doing sits if they don't want to. So I think giving them control and agency in their training is important for anything, really, if you're going to have success. And it's part of our fun, not fear ethics. We don't make the dogs do things that they don't want to do. So why do I teach it? Well, for me, it's better to have something and not need it than it is to need something and not have it. If the dog ever gets out, the tag has his name and address on it. Some people, especially someone who might be elderly or might not have a lot of physical dexterity, might need the dog to be still before they can read the tag to get the dog home. So they might ask the dog for a sit. If the dog knows a sit, then they're more willing to comply, then it's going to be easier to get your dog home. Sometimes it's necessary to have a dog in a certain position, maybe for grooming. They might not be comfortable in laying down or standing position. Perhaps a vet might even need the dog to sit for some reason. If they already know the sit, it's going to be a lot less stressful trying to get them into that position. My Moo, bless his soul, being small and fluffy, he often attracted unwanted attention, shall we say, of larger bouncy dogs. And all they wanted to do was play with him a lot of the time. Not every dog that comes up to your dog is vicious. You've got that friendly dog in the park. These dogs, they'd often been taught to sit, not very much recall, but they'd been taught to sit, and I could often stop an over bouncy dog who Moo would have been terrified of by asking them to sit and then handing them a biscuit. So rather than them running over and then getting told off and Moo getting even more scared, sometimes just asking for a sit is a really easy way to get them out of that situation. And the owner would then have a chance to come running over yelling, "Don't worry, he's friendly," like they do. Now, in hindsight, I might have been rewarding that dog for coming over, but at the time, all I wanted was for them to not jump all over my Moo. And the more experiences he had of dogs coming over and not doing that, the better it was for him, as then he had more appropriate behaviours being practised around him, and so the dogs that come running over become less of a threat to him, and he would also get a reward at the same time. So in some ways, actually, it was helping him as well as not screaming and shouting at the other dog and making things worse. And so although I may well have been rewarding that other dog from coming over, I think there are many worse ways of handling it than asking them to sit. Now, Twyla, she is that dog in the park, and I don't generally let her off the lead unless it's safe to do so. But when she spots things across the park, she actually chooses to sit without my asking. I've never trained her to do that. She just does it automatically. And she's always done it with no interference from me, which, to be honest, it does make life easier, because she is very strong, and if she wanted to go chasing off after something, she easily could. So if she chooses to sit and she sits there and she looks at something, then although I haven't asked her to do it, I do reinforce it. I will just sit there and start giving her treats and, talking nicely to her until she chooses to get up and she's gathered what information she needs. Then off we go with our walk. And like I say, this is something she does naturally by herself. Not every dog will, but because she's doing it out of her, out of her own free will, I will reinforce that behaviour. So when it comes to crossing the road, I teach a dog a wait, and then I teach them a cue to cross the road. The dog can choose any position they feel comfortable in, and then I test them by stepping off the curb to see if they're actually waiting and not just following me. If they don't follow me off the curb, then I'll step back up onto the path and then I'll cue them to cross over. And in this way, I know that I'm teaching that dog that you don't cross the road unless you're cued to, rather than being told to sit, but the dog doesn't necessarily know. A lot of dogs will sort of stay in a sit stay or, that sort of thing. But a lot of dogs won't. And if there's something they want to chase, sometimes, that can be quite a powerful thing for them. So giving them a cue to cross the road instead of just expecting them to sit at the side of the road sometimes is a little bit better. Of course, your dog should always be on a lead if they're near the road. I've just add that in there. Finally, I believe teaching things to your dog, as long as they're enjoying the learning, can be a bonding and confidence experience in itself. The time you spend doing anything pleasant with your dog and praising them, rewarding them and making them feel clever and like a winner is going to make them feel happy and capable, which is going to make them confident in other areas of their life. A confident dog is not an anxious dog. If they're not getting the idea or they're not enjoying the training, then firstly I would check for pain issues. Stop the training for starters and check for pain issues. If your dog's got aching hips or aching legs or anything like that, they need to see a vet really. And then as long as they have a clean bill of health, you want to then be thinking about how are you teaching it? Are you using good enough rewards? Is it worth the effort for the dog? Are you breaking it down into easy steps? Is the dog even interested? You don't want to be forcing them to do things they don't want to do. But at the same time, if you can make it into another fun game, then go for it. If ever you want to learn more about having a fun, not fear life with your dog, do come and check out our club and school at www.funnotfear.co.uk or our on-the-ground business, locksdogs.co.uk, where you can find out all about your dog's behaviour and how to have an amazing life with them. So, those are our thoughts on the hot topic of sit cues. What do you think about the sit cue? Do you teach it or not? And why? It's important to always know why we're teaching things to our dogs rather than just blindly following the herd, because in that way we get it right for our own dogs and what they need. So, that's it for this episode of the Fun Not Fear Dog podcast. Hope you enjoyed listening to it as much as we enjoyed putting it together for you. Don't forget, if you like what you heard and you want help for your dog, you can also check out our one-to-one services, or you can join our Fun Not Fear Club and get courses and resources and interactive lives with a qualified behaviourist and trainer for less than £2 a week at locksdogs.co.uk. And remember, there is nothing that can be taught with fear that can't be taught with fun apart from fear itself. See you next time.